As we sit here, the world goes into chaos. But what's really happened is the bad and toxic behaviour of corporations has moved into the government and into the most powerful government in the world, which is currently the USA. If you look at the behaviour of Donald Trump and those around him, it is no different to what we've seen with various companies and their CEOs and the rise of bad management.
Or losers. You got a lot of losers, mostly losers, fortunately. It's a good thing to have a lot of losers. I always like to hang around with losers, actually, because it makes me feel better. I hate guys that are very, very successful and you have to listen to their success stories. I like people that like to listen to my success.
A while ago I did a video on meritocracy and versus the old boys club, and I pointed out how the old boys club was always a bad situation and why meritocracy was far more important. Since that video was produced over a year ago, I myself have been on the receiving end of a number of situations that I would best describe as proving that the old boys club is alive and well, but also that there is a tendency to hire B and C players because they'll say yes rather than hiring the smartest people in the room. And Donald Trump and the Trump administration have shown this absolutely primarily with the use of Pete Hesketh and various others who have clearly not listened to the people in the room, and it's become like an echo chamber of bad decisions, in one which at the moment is pushing oil at over $100 a barrel as we make this video, and clearly shows that no one has read or understood the opposition or the nuances of what they were doing.
And power. Look what happened. In the last 2 weeks, they weren't supposed to go after all these other countries in the Middle East. Those missiles were set to go after them. So they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked. And the other one, they fought back. They could have yielded. But think of...
Which has led to the Strait of Hormuz being closed. Again, why does this come back to bad corporate behaviours? In the corporate world, the sphere of influence is the company. It's the people around the company. It is mainly the company. And when you're in this sphere of influence, the sphere of influence that you and the effect that you have on others around you is relatively small. Bad decisions affect the company. It may affect your suppliers, it may affect your customers, but at the end of the day, the orbit of which you influence is quite small. Once you get into a political world and into being in the biggest government in the world, you then become, your sphere of influence is far, far greater and it affects far more. With people, and Donald has made multiple occasions where he said no one said that the Iranians would shut the Strait of Hormuz. That can only be shown by history as having occurred on multiple occasions, and makes one wonder who exactly was sitting in the room and making the recommendations that this was a good idea. But again, coming back to the corporate behaviour, I have watched through my 25 years in the corporate world multiple occasions where companies have made bad business decisions because the people in the room were not listening to all the angles and listening to opposing voices. They were only listening to the ones that they wanted to hear. When that occurs, you end up with these situations where decisions are made very, very poorly, and then at some point someone either has to backtrack or there has to be a fundamental break and then a change. It occurs far more commonly, but again, the damage is to the company, it's not to the world as we know it. If we take Porsche as an example, everyone in Porsche has pushed the electric vehicle mandate with the reduction of ICE, the phasing out of the internal combustion engine. However, this has not gone well for them, and Porsche's latest financial statements show a company that's literally had to write off millions and millions and millions in its poor strategic decisioning. This decisioning has meant that there will now be a delay in any other vehicles coming out, and they are actually making a switch back to the internal combustion engine, having pushed an EV mandate. This risk and these decisions again have been made by people who did not listen to all the views in the room, and this is not one of the only places where poor strategic decisions are made because people have not listened to all sides of the situation, or have worked in an echo box where they've all agreed to what's going on without actually anyone saying, by the way, do you realise we're crashing towards the rocks? There are examples of other companies that have obviously figured this out and done it properly and so on and so forth, but it really does again show that when your corporate bad behaviour, and bear in mind that this is not something that just happens at the top of a company, it can happen all the way through a company, especially when you've got poor management who are hiring their friends, or hiring yes people, or hiring B's and C's because it makes them look better. You perpetuate this problem, but again it comes back down to a scope of influence. When you then bring this onto the world stage and you have people who are not looking up and looking to see where they're positioned against the rest, it then becomes a massive, massive problem. There are ways around this problem, and the most important thing is that you have people who are smart around you that are looking, and that they don't all say yes, that they don't all agree with whatever you suggest or however you suggest for it to be done. It doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong, or you're right and they're wrong. It just provides a slightly different perspective on the world, and if we all say the same thing, we end up in trouble, because we can make bad decisions and then it gets egged on by the fact that no one actually ever turns around to give us a bit of a reality check of whether that's the correct or appropriate thing for us to do. So in a business, the best thing to do is to make sure that you have views from all aspects and from people who are knowledgeable on the subject, so that you make the most informed decisions, rather than they being on vibes or on the fact that the people that are around you support you and say that that is a good idea. If you like this and everything else, please give us a like, and thank you for watching.